The courtroom was packed. Every seat was filled, every breath held, every eye fixed on the black woman in uniform sitting quietly in the defendant's chair. Ava Jefferson didn't flinch as the white judge adjusted his glasses and read the verdict that would shatter what remained of her life. Guilty. Sentenced to death by lethal injection. Not a sound came from her lips, not a gasp, not a protest. Only her eyes moved, toward the one soul who hadn't abandoned her. From the side of the courtroom, a low bark cut through the heavy silence. Then another, louder, harsher. Her K-9 partner, Shadow, a massive German shepherd trained to obey a whisper, now barked uncontrollably, thrashing against the leash held tight by two officers. His muscles strained, claws scraping the tiled floor, refusing to move. The officers tried to drag him out. He wouldn't budge. "Control your dog," one of them hissed. But Shadow didn't listen. He never looked at them. His eyes were locked on Ava. Bark after bark, a cry of confusion, loyalty, and rage. Ava finally turned her head, just once, just enough to meet his gaze. She wasn't afraid of death. She wasn't even shocked anymore. But seeing Shadow like this, that cut deeper than any sentence ever could. He didn't understand why the people they served were doing this. And deep inside, neither did she. She had spent years working for justice, chasing down criminals, risking her life in neighborhoods where no other officers would step. Her record was flawless, until one night, one single night, turned her from a respected black officer into a death row convict. The prosecutor had painted her as cold, calculated, dangerous. A woman capable of killing a man in his apartment, then calmly walking away. The victim? Brandon T. Walsh. White, wealthy, connected. She had apparently left her prints on the weapon, been caught near the crime scene, and had no alibi. The evidence was a perfectly stacked house of cards. But Ava knew what no one in that courtroom cared to hear. She wasn't there. She had never even met the man. But it didn't matter. They didn't care that she was one of the best K-9 officers in the force. They didn't care that Shadow, who had been trained to detect trauma, refused to leave her side. They didn't care that the so-called surveillance footage was blurred, edited, and suspiciously incomplete. They didn't care that she was black, and that the moment the news broke, headlines called her aggressive before they called her innocent. The media already had its villain, and so did the courtroom. As the judge's voice echoed the final words of the sentence, a subtle smirk passed across the face of the lead detective, Michael Harrington. He had overseen the case. White, sharp-suited, clean record. The man who had once praised Ava in press conferences now sat with his arms folded, expressionless. Shadow's barking grew frantic. His leash slipped for a second. He lunged forward before being yanked back again. One of the guards cursed under his breath. "That damn dog's gone crazy." "He knows," Ava whispered. The words were barely audible, but the officer next to her turned. "What did you say?" She didn't answer. Because what could she say? That her dog knew she was being murdered in broad daylight by a broken system? That this courtroom wasn't justice? It was execution wrapped in protocol? As she stood to be escorted out, her chains rattling louder than the gavel, she gave Shadow one last glance. He was still staring, still fighting, still barking, his paws leaving scratch marks on the floor, as if he could claw her back from the hell they were dragging her into. She turned her head away, not because she couldn't bear to look at him, but because she didn't want the officers to see her cry. They had already taken everything from her. She wouldn't let them take that too. The courtroom door slammed shut behind her. Shadow's bark echoed one final time through the hallway. It didn't sound like a dog. It sounded like a scream. The K-9 transfer van rumbled through the narrow service roads outside the prison, but Shadow didn't make a sound. He sat stiff in the metal cage, eyes locked forward, unmoving. The officers transporting him didn't care much. He was just another asset being reassigned. But he wasn't the same dog anymore. Since Ava had been sentenced, Shadow had changed. The day after the courtroom, he refused to eat. The same dog who once sprang into action at a single command now ignored everything. Trainers called out his name, whistled, tapped on his kennel door. Nothing. He wouldn't look at them. He wouldn't bark. He just waited. At first, they thought he was just adjusting to the new environment. But days passed. Then a week. Still nothing. He lay in the corner of his assigned kennel, eyes glued to the door as if expecting someone to walk in. Not someone. Her. He had been raised beside her, trained under her voice, trusted no one else. Every treat, every mission, every scar, shared with her. Ava Jefferson wasn't just his handler. She was his person. And now she was gone. It was the new K-9 unit officer, Randall, who made the first complaint. "This dog's broken," he muttered, watching Shadow ignore a simple sit command during drills. Either fix him or retire him. Retirement for a working K-9 wasn't common unless the dog was sick or old. Shadow was neither. He was still young, in perfect physical shape, but his heart wasn't in it. He didn't fetch, didn't track, didn't sniff for anything except the floor near the exit door. Every time it opened, his ears perked. Every time it wasn't her, he laid back down. Another officer laughed one day during training. "That's what happens when you train a dog with a criminal. He's loyal to a killer now." The moment the words left his mouth, Shadow snapped. It was instant. A deep, warning growl from the pit of his chest, low and thunderous. His fur bristled, teeth bared. He didn't lunge, but he didn't have to. Everyone in that room froze. "He's not responding," another officer whispered. "Something's seriously wrong with that dog." But it wasn't something wrong. It was something right. Shadow remembered. He knew. The scent of injustice wasn't just human. It lingered in the air, in uniforms, in lies. The department moved quickly after that, filed a report declaring Shadow emotionally unstable due to traumatic handler loss. A fancy way of saying, he's no good to us anymore. The recommendation came: pull him from active duty, retire him early, put him in a training center or a care program until a civilian home could be found. Someone who wanted an ex-cop dog who no longer responded to commands. But one person saw something different. Grayson Hayes, Ava's former partner, black, quiet, smart, respected, but not liked. He didn't smile much, didn't attend the office bar nights, didn't shake hands with every lieutenant, but he got the job done, and he never stopped believing Ava was innocent. When he heard about Shadow's condition, he drove out to the facility that same night. The moment he walked through the door, Shadow didn't move, just stared. Grayson kneeled slowly beside the cage. "You remember me?" Silence. "You remember Ava?" Shadow whined, just once. Then suddenly he bolted up, scratched at the metal bars, let out a sharp, echoing bark, tail stiff, not wagging, not playful, focused. "He's been like that every time her name's said," the trainer explained from behind. "It's eerie." Grayson stood up, expression hardening. "He's not broken," he said. "He's the only one paying attention." Later that night, as he drove Shadow home in the passenger seat of his truck, the dog didn't rest. Eyes stayed open, ears perked, every muscle tight. Grayson watched him between red lights, feeling something heavy settle in his chest. They hadn't just taken Ava's freedom. They were trying to erase her. And this dog, this loyal, stubborn, hurting dog, was the only proof left that something was wrong. Grayson muttered under his breath, barely audible over the soft hum of the road. "We're gonna find out what really happened. You hear me?" Shadow didn't move, but in the silence, that look in his eyes said it all. He already knew. The night Grayson brought Shadow home, the sky outside cracked with thunder. Rain lashed against the windows like warning shots from the universe. Shadow didn't move from his spot by the door. He just sat there, tail still, ears alert, eyes staring at nothing and everything. Grayson watched him quietly, arms folded. He had reviewed Ava's case 100 times. Every report, every piece of evidence, every surveillance image. It all looked perfect, too perfect. No room for doubt. No room for truth. Shadow refused to lie down, even when Grayson laid out a thick blanket. He kept staring at the exit, like he was waiting for Ava to walk in. Or maybe waiting for a sign. Around 2 a.m., Grayson was at his desk, flipping through old files again when he heard it. A low, sharp growl. He looked up. Shadow was at the door, nose to the floor, body tense. "What is it?" Grayson whispered. The dog didn't respond. He scratched at the hardwood, then suddenly bolted toward the back window. Grayson followed quickly, eyes narrowing. "Where are you going?" Shadow didn't wait. He pawed at the latch, then growled again, this time deeper, louder, like he was remembering something. Grayson grabbed his coat, slipped his gun into the holster, and opened the door. "Let's see where this goes." The night was cold, streets damp with fresh rain. Shadow walked ahead with purpose. No sniffing random bushes, no bathroom breaks. Just a straight path through the alleyways and cracked sidewalks of the old precinct zone. Grayson kept up, his boots crunching gravel, eyes flicking toward every shadow. They reached an alley. Narrow, dark, abandoned. The same alley where Brandon Walsh, the man Ava was accused of killing, had once lived. Shadow stopped at the far end. He sniffed the ground, paced, then suddenly began to dig. His claws scraped cement, nails echoing in the silence. Grayson crouched beside him, unsure what the dog had picked up on. A second later, Shadow froze. He sniffed once more, then stepped aside. Grayson spotted it. A corner of a glove, black leather, jammed between the concrete and the wall. He pulled it out, heart suddenly racing. Dried blood crusted the surface. Too dry to be recent, but too real to ignore. There was something else, too. A strange patch stuck to the glove. It wasn't fabric. It was soft, smooth, too smooth. Grayson held it up to the light. It reflected strangely. Not shiny, not matte. Something in between. It felt like skin, but it wasn't. It was synthetic, but incredibly advanced. Something that didn't belong in an alley. Something that looked human. Shadow growled again, standing protectively between Grayson and the far end of the alley, where shadows shifted in the dark. "We need to go," Grayson muttered. He packed the glove and the patch into a bag and led Shadow back the way they came. At home, Grayson laid the material out on his desk and took photos under every light angle. He ran it through police forensics the next morning under a fake case ID. Results came in the same day. Biopolymer compound. Not commercially available. Not from any supplier in the States. It mimicked human skin, texture, tone, even warmth. And it had traces of makeup. Grayson's stomach turned. Someone had used it to look like Ava. The surveillance footage, the eyewitness report, the perfect match image in court. It was her, but it wasn't her. Someone had used this mask to frame her. Shadow paced behind him, restless, as if he knew what Grayson had just discovered. "You were there," Grayson said softly, looking at the dog. "You knew it wasn't her, and you couldn't tell anyone." Shadow stopped pacing. He sat, but his eyes never left Grayson's. He had waited all this time for someone to see what he saw. Grayson clenched his jaw, rage bubbling beneath his calm. They didn't just frame a black cop. They created a perfect lie and buried the only voice that could have proven it wrong. But they forgot one thing. They forgot about the dog. And they forgot about the man who still owed her his life. Grayson didn't sleep that night. He sat with the strange synthetic skin laid out under the desk lamp, its surface catching every flicker of light, like a warning. In one hand was the blood-stained glove. In the other, nothing but questions. If this was real, if someone had used a lifelike face mask to impersonate Ava, then this wasn't a wrongful conviction. It was a setup, a calculated frame job, and someone with power had pulled it off perfectly. Shadow lay by the door, eyes open, not sleeping either. He hadn't barked since they got back. He didn't need to. The silence was enough. Grayson flipped through the original crime scene photos again, the ones from Brandon Walsh's apartment. The judge had ruled them conclusive. The jury never looked twice. But now, under a new lens, he caught something they didn't. On the wall, behind the couch, almost invisible. A faint, etched triangle with a horizontal line slicing through it. It looked like nothing, but it was everything. He leaned in closer. That wasn't graffiti. It wasn't random. It was marked. He opened the photos from Harvey Donovan's case, a recent murder just reported in the news, another high-profile victim, different location, no known connection to Ava. But there it was again. Same symbol, same position, same eerie triangle, faint and partially wiped. Grayson's blood ran cold. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. And whoever left those marks wanted it to be found. Just not too easily. He pulled the files up side by side and stared. Shadow walked up beside the desk, stared too. His nose twitched, as if the images smelled wrong. Grayson whispered, more to himself than to the dog, "You were trying to tell me all along, weren't you?" The next morning, Grayson called in a favor from an old friend, Ethan Carter, an investigative journalist known for digging into stories the police never touched. If anyone could trace the symbol, it was him. They met at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. Ethan had a laptop open, a worn denim jacket, and eyes that looked like they'd seen too many secrets. Grayson slid into the seat across from him and placed the photos down on the table. "I need to know what this symbol means." Ethan looked once, then twice. His jaw tightened. "I've seen it before," he said slowly. "It's not in any official record, no police database, but I saw this back when I investigated a group called Black Widow." Grayson's breath caught. "What's Black Widow?" "A ghost organization," Ethan said. "Private assassins, real high level, trained to make things look like suicide, accidents, or airtight convictions." Grayson didn't move. They don't just kill, Ethan continued. They erase, rebuild reality, replace people, make truth look like lies, and lies look like evidence. He flipped his laptop around and typed quickly. Photo after photo flashed by, crime scenes across the globe, each with the same faint mark. Always hidden, always in the background. This isn't just about Ava, Ethan said. She was targeted, but the hit wasn't personal. It was professional. But why her? Grayson asked. She was a cop, one of the good ones. Ethan nodded. That's exactly why. Shadow, sitting by Grayson's feet, suddenly let out a low growl. It wasn't loud, but it was focused. His eyes locked on one of the images on Ethan's screen. A close-up of a murder scene from London. Another man killed execution style. Another hidden triangle on the wall. Grayson leaned in. He knows something. Ethan stared at the dog. Either he's psychic, or someone's been showing him those places before. Grayson's jaw clenched. I think Shadow saw the real killer. I think he's been trying to show us since day one. Ethan shut the laptop slowly. Then we follow the dog. Back home, Grayson pulled out a city map and pinned every location Ava had been linked to, then layered it with the recent murder scenes. A pattern emerged. One no cop had seen. Or maybe no cop was allowed to see. Shadow paced again, tail stiff, ears sharp. They weren't just chasing the truth anymore. They were walking into a war zone, guided by the only soul who'd never stopped believing Ava was innocent. A dog, a black cop, and a man who once trusted the system. The first sign came in the morning mail. Grayson wasn't expecting anything, but there it was, an unmarked envelope slipped under the door. No stamp, no name, just white paper, folded once. He opened it. One sentence. Stop now while you still can. If not, your dog dies first. He froze. Shadow was lying by the window, eyes half closed, resting, but alert, as always. Grayson didn't move, didn't speak. He just stared at the words on the page. They weren't threatening Ava anymore. They were threatening him. And Shadow. He crumpled the note and threw it into the fireplace. Too late, he whispered. Later that night, he couldn't shake the tension. Shadow had sensed it too. The dog didn't rest like usual. He stayed by the door, ears twitching, body stiff. When Grayson turned off the lights and sat in the dark with only the glow of the street lamp outside, he heard it. Just barely. A slow car rolling past. No headlights. Then again, the same car. Third time, it stopped. Shadow jumped up instantly, low growl vibrating in his throat. Grayson moved to the window. Just shadows outside. Then a flash, a reflection of glass and something metallic. Gun. Get down! Grayson shouted. A shot rang out. The window shattered. Glass exploded into the living room. Shadow barked and lunged toward Grayson, pushing him down. Another shot cracked through the air. This time, it hit. Not Grayson. Shadow yelped. The dog hit the floor hard, a thin red line slicing across his back leg. Number, Shadow. Stay with me. Grayson scrambled to his side, hands trembling. The dog whimpered, licking at the blood. His eyes were still sharp, still watching. Grayson grabbed his gun, heart pounding. He crouched low, eyes scanning the broken window. But the car was gone. Just taillights disappearing into the rain. Grayson didn't chase. He had one mission now, save Shadow. The vet was across town, but he made it there in 12 minutes flat. He didn't remember the turns, just the speed. Inside, Dr. Lisa, a black woman who had once served in the force, rushed to the door when she saw the blood. Gunshot! Grazed. Maybe worse. Can you save him? Lisa looked into Grayson's eyes. I'll try. He stayed outside the operating room, pacing, heart racing, blood dried on his hands. Memories of Ava's trial flashed in his head, how they had erased her without lifting a finger. And now they were trying to erase the only creature that could uncover the truth. 45 minutes later, Lisa stepped out. Her face was tight, but steady. He's strong, she said. No bones hit, muscle damage, deep tear. He'll recover, but no running for a while. Grayson exhaled. Finally. His knees almost buckled. She led him into the room. Shadow lay on a table, eyes half open, groggy, bandaged. But he was breathing, steady, controlled. Grayson knelt beside him. You saved my life. Shadow blinked slowly. Then, barely, he licked Grayson's hand. Lisa watched quietly. This dog isn't normal, she said. He's holding on to something. Grayson nodded. He's holding on to Ava. When they returned home, Grayson carried Shadow inside, laying him gently on a blanket near the fire. The blood was gone now, but the damage wasn't. Shadow tried to sit up. Don't, Grayson said softly. You've done enough. But the dog didn't rest. His eyes never left the door. He was still guarding something, still on mission. Grayson picked up his phone and called Ethan. They shot him, he said. The dog. Ethan's voice dropped. Then you're close. Too close. They know I have the mask, the glove, the analysis report. Everything. What are you going to do? Grayson looked at Shadow, chest rising and falling, breath strong despite the injury. I'm going to finish this, he said, before they finish us. Outside, the rain hit harder. Thunder cracked again. But inside that small house, something had changed. Grayson wasn't just investigating anymore. He was at war. And Shadow, despite the wound, had made one thing clear. They'd have to kill him before they stopped him. The prison was too quiet that night. Ava could feel it. Something in the way the guards avoided eye contact. The way the halls echoed too long, like everyone already knew what was coming. Earlier that day, a whisper had passed through the bars. They moved up your date, a female inmate muttered. Executions in 3 days. That wasn't standard. That wasn't justice. That was a message. They wanted her gone. Now Ava paced in her cell, heart pounding like war drums. There would be no appeal, no trial rerun, just a silent room, a needle, and a cold goodbye, all tied up in paperwork. She sat on the edge of the metal bed and whispered to herself, They're not gonna bury me. Outside her cell, the hallway flickered with dim yellow light. A single tray of food was pushed through the bars. She didn't touch it. She remembered what happened last time she trusted a meal. Another inmate, Martha, had taken her tray. 10 minutes later, she was dead on the floor, choking, eyes wide with poison. They had tried to kill her once. They would try again. Tonight, she wasn't going to let them. She had spent weeks watching the guards, studying patterns, timing door buzzers, counting steps, waiting for one weak link. And she found him. Officer Bradley. Young, overconfident, distracted by his phone during rounds. When he passed her cell, Ava slammed her body into the door and screamed, Help! Martha's ghost is back! She's here! The officer froze, turned, then laughed. You really gone mad in here, huh? As he approached the bars, shaking his head, Ava struck. She grabbed his arm through the slot and slammed it hard into the metal. He yelled. She snatched his key card. And then it all happened fast. Ava slipped out, sprinted through the hallway, ducked past the infirmary, and headed toward the exit tunnel used during emergencies. Alarms screamed behind her. Red lights flashed. Inmate escaping. Cell block 4. Code black. Her lungs burned, feet barely touching the ground. As she rounded the corner, a guard jumped in front of her. She didn't hesitate. Hit him with everything she had. He collapsed with a grunt. She grabbed his badge and ran. Outside, the prison yard was chaos. Flashlights, dogs, shouts. Ava ducked low, moved fast, through the back gate that had been left unlocked during construction repairs. She slipped into the darkness. She didn't stop running. Not even when her legs gave out. Not even when the night swallowed her whole. Grayson's phone buzzed just after midnight. He picked it up. Blocked number. She's out. What? Ava. She escaped. Grayson shot up from his chair, Shadow lifting his head from the blanket instantly. Where is she? No idea, the voice said. But you better find her before they do. Grayson didn't think. He grabbed his keys, his gun, and Shadow's collar. Come on, boy. She's out there. Shadow limped to his feet, favoring his injured leg, but his eyes were full of fire again. Across town, Ava crouched behind a dumpster, blood dripping from a gash on her arm. Sirens wailed in the distance. She knew they were tracking her. But she wasn't done yet. She was going to clear her name. Or die trying. Just then, a set of headlights swept across the alley. She stood, fists clenched. But when the car stopped and the door opened, she froze. Don't move, someone shouted. Then she saw him, Grayson, and beside him, Shadow. The dog barked once, limped forward, and then sprinted. Ava dropped to her knees as Shadow ran straight into her arms. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched his fur. You're okay. You're okay. Grayson stepped out slowly. His face, usually hard and unreadable, was cracked open with something raw. Relief. Grief. Fire. I've got proof, he said. Everything. The glove. The mask. The symbols. You were framed. Ava looked up at him. They want me dead. I know. Then why are you here? Grayson didn't blink. Because I won't let them win. Behind them, sirens grew louder. We don't have much time. Ava nodded. Then let's finish this. They got into the car, Grayson at the wheel, Ava beside him, Shadow in the back seat. The dog rested his head on her shoulder like he never left. And just like that, they weren't running anymore. They were fighting back. The safe house wasn't much. Just an old cabin upstate, tucked between trees that groaned in the wind. The kind of place no one asked questions, and no one cared who you were hiding from. Ava sat on the wooden floor, with Shadow curled beside her, his head resting on her lap. He was healing, but the scar on his side, like hers, was permanent. Grayson stood by the window, scanning the woods with a soldier's eyes. The files he'd copied sat in a sealed envelope on the table. Photos, symbol markings, glove, biopolymer fragment, lab reports. Everything they needed to burn the system down. But they knew better. This wasn't a courtroom game anymore. This was survival. Ava broke the silence. If we give this to the authorities, they'll bury it. Grayson nodded. And us. So, what do we do? He turned from the window. We don't give it to the system. Ava frowned. Then who? Grayson reached for his laptop, flipped it open, and pulled up an anonymous site used by whistleblowers. The People. He uploaded the files piece by piece, time-stamped photos, matching crime scene angles, biopolymer analysis, audio evidence Ethan had pulled of a corrupt captain admitting the truth. All under a post titled, "They framed a black cop. Her dog fought back." Within hours, the post exploded. Blogs picked it up. Independent journalists called it a modern-day execution setup. Hashtags trended in the US and UK. Justice for Ava. K9 Truth. System failed her. Then came the backlash. News anchors scrambled for spin. Is this a case of false conviction or digital manipulation? But the evidence was too airtight. The triangle symbols, the biological mask, the glove traced back to a known assassin linked to Black Widow. The system cracked, publicly. And in the chaos, the truth finally slipped through. Michael Harrington's face flashed on TV screens. He was arrested in a quiet neighborhood just outside D.C. His house raided, his financial records exposed, offshore accounts linked to political donors, shell corporations, assassination contracts. A judge ordered an emergency review of Ava's conviction. But Grayson and Ava didn't celebrate. Because real justice doesn't come with applause. It comes with scars. It comes after you've bled, run, watched everything you believed in turn to ash. And sometimes it never comes at all. They stayed hidden, even after the warrants were dropped. Too many names were still unexposed. Too many people with power still out there, still watching. Shadow recovered quickly, faster than expected. His limp faded. His energy returned, but he didn't bark much anymore. He didn't need to. Ava would take him on walks behind the cabin, silent, hand resting on his back like a soldier walking with her oldest friend. One night, as they sat by the fire, Ava spoke. They said I was a danger to society. You were, Grayson said, smiling faintly. To theirs. She looked down at the dog. He never gave up on me. Neither did I. She looked up. Why? Grayson's voice was low. Because I watched a black woman serve with integrity, get framed by her own department, and still never turn bitter. And because that dog knew the truth before anyone else did. She didn't respond, just nodded. Outside, the sky was dark. But it didn't feel like the end. The next morning, Shadow was already by the door when Ava stepped out. He was ready, ears up, tail alert, gaze steady. She picked up a small pouch and handed it to Grayson. What's this? Backup drive, every file we ever collected, in case they come again. He took it, nodded, then slipped it into his jacket. You think they will? She stared into the distance. They always do. But now, she wasn't alone. Now, they weren't victims. They were survivors. She walked out into the sun with Shadow by her side. And with every step, the world behind her shook a little more. Because the system had tried to silence her. But it underestimated one thing. The loyalty of a dog. And the fire of a black woman who refused to stay buried.